Great. We're now recording this call, the Think Outside the Sadaka Box Camp Philanthropy 2014 Summer Educator Training. Thanks again for everybody to be here. Here's what we're going to be doing during this training. We're going to be giving you a timeline of, as the Summer Educator, what you should be thinking about for the Teen Foundation, both before the summer starts, during the summer, and then follow up after the summer. We'll talk a little bit about what a Teen Foundation does and how it fits into camp and the camp schedule. We'll be providing an overview of the program guide, which is available online that you can all download. And then we're going to go into some basics of grant making. So to kick it off on this slide and the next two slides, we're going to show you a suggested timeline for the Summer Educator. This will vary depending on when your camp actually starts and when you show up for staff week and when the campers arrive who you're going to be doing this unit for. Like I know Camp Yahad, who does most of this at the end of the summer, some of these months listed here won't exactly apply. But this is just a rough order of things that you should be thinking about as the summer starts up soon. You'll notice that some of the bullets have asterisks. Several of our camps on this call are receiving funding from JTFN to do this program. I believe all camp except Camp Shy are receiving grants, micro grants from JTFN. So for those camps, these are the required elements. So I guess that's everybody but Camp Shy. In May, the Summer Educator, meaning you guys, should attend the training, which you're doing right now, so you can cross it off the list. Then you're going to work with your administrator. The administrator is a camp director or senior professional that we've already been working with that has an understanding of this program and will sort of serve as the point person. So you and that person should finalize the Teen Foundation schedule within the camp calendar. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The other thing to start thinking about soon is identifying 5 or 6 local nonprofits and distributing a request for a proposal to get back a grant proposal. You should secure at least 3 grant proposals, ideally before the summer starts. And then at the same time, JTFN is going to distribute grant proposals from national and international Jewish organizations. We'll talk a lot more about that in the second half of this training. Moving into June and July when camp is actually going, it's important to think about training other summer staff, possibly during staff orientation. We'll touch on that a little bit later as well. And then when the campers you're doing with this arrive, starting to actually lead them through the process of the Teen Foundation. Confirming at least 2 site visits to the local nonprofits. And then Summer Educator will have the first consultation with JTFN staff. Moving into July as the summer gets going, just you and your administrator will start to arrange transportation for site visits. Then take those teens on the site visit. Then you or the camper will write a blog post or article. Summer Educator will have a second consultation with JTN staff, and then the teens will ultimately decide where to award the grants. Then when we think about the camp summer ending in August and September, you will inform all nonprofits whether they did or did not receive a grant from your camp, and then issue checks. That might actually be done by the administrator or someone in your bookkeeping office to the nonprofits, and then we will see copies of those checks here at JTFN. That's a really important step to make sure that we see those. And then after the summer, you are going to be participating in a debrief call with Naomi and myself. Last summer we did paper surveys for the staff, and that's different from this summer. We're not going to be doing paper surveys. Instead, we're going to be doing sort of qualitative evaluation phone calls with all of you. Before I jump in, I want to say 2 quick things. One, we're going to be sending you after this call a copy of these slides so that you can have them on record and you can share these slides with other summer staff that you feel that it's important to know. Second, we'll also be sending a copy of this timeline in a 1-page document that you can sort of print out and keep in your workspace at camp as a reminder of sort of what are the things you should be thinking about as the months move along. Great, and before we jump on, Waysel, we have one more person joined us. Sam, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Would you mind we have a small group, would you mind just introducing yourself, say where you're from and what you do in the summers?
Yeah, sure. My name's Sam Abidara. I work at the New Jersey Wide Camps. I work full-time with a JCC affiliated overnight camp. We actually have 7 different camps within the agency, and I run a camp specifically for high school age kids. So we have about 200 or more entering 10th and entering 11th graders, as well as a separate Israel program as well for about another 50 to 70. And last year we participated in the Camp Philanthropy program within camp. It was great. We really enjoyed it and loved being part of it, and we're back again this year.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam.
No problem.
So before we jump ahead further, I want to take a moment to share some really encouraging statistics from last summer's evaluation that get to the core of why we do this work. And I also want to say a big thank you to those of you who participated in last summer's program and there for the evaluation. So thanks for helping us be able to share this with everybody. Last summer we worked with over 1,100 campers who granted over $47,000 to nonprofits. And we heard from our evaluation that 79% of staff and 90% of camp directors felt that the program had a positive impact on the overall camp experience. We also learned that 81% of campers felt that the program increased their connection to their Jewish values, such as Tikkun Olam, tzedakah, and philanthropy. So these are some of the impacts that you can have this summer, as well as the others up on the screen with your involvement in this program. So what do teens in the Teen Foundation do? While this may be a review for some of you, it's an important reminder to conceptualize why we're here, as it's been many months since you worked on this program. So a Teen Foundation is a group of 12 to 25 campers that come together for 15 to 20 program hours and start to explore their Jewish values. They go through this philanthropic process, which we have broken up into 8 steps. And you can remember the number 8 because that will come back in a few minutes. So during that process, they understand the similarities and differences between tzedakah and philanthropy. They learn how to work as a group and make decisions using consensus building. They create a mission statement that guides their grant making or giving away of money. They review at least 3 grant proposals from nonprofit organizations, conduct at least 2 site visits to local nonprofits, and then they make a decision using consensus on where to give that money. And last, they hopefully share and celebrate this process and their decision with the rest of camp. Now we'll talk a little bit about what a Teen Foundation can accomplish. So JTFN works with 133 Jewish teen philanthropy programs throughout North America. And we see teen foundations, which teach teens, again, about grant making or the giving of money, as a tool for engaging teens in exploring Jewish values and what it means to be part of a Jewish community. The goals of a teen foundation are to teach basic philanthropic principles and giving based on Jewish values, to provide a forum to explore personal values around giving, to develop teen leadership and teamwork skills, to teach group decision making, and to create a culture of giving at your camp. So we've been working with camps for a number of summers, more intensively for 3, but our first work with the Ramah camping system dates back to 2007. And through these experiences, we've learned that Jewish teen philanthropy has a 3-pronged impact at summer camp. It not only impacts the teens, who were the original population we are going for, but also staff, who can learn a great deal as facilitators, and I think we heard that before. I believe it was from Ashley, who shared that she learned a lot, as well as her teens learning a lot last summer. And finally, it really impacts the camp as a whole in developing a culture of giving. So before we move ahead into some more specifics of the program, does anybody have questions about these major principles of a teen foundation or the goals? I'm going to take the silence as no. If you, just as a reminder, you can press *7 to unmute yourself. You can also use the chat, which Andrew and I can see, for questions. So as I mentioned before, 8 is the magic number in this program. So you'll see that the program guide helps you, the summer educator, lead the process that I just described and accomplish all those goals over a series of 8 tasks. Each task has a cover sheet that lays out the learning goals for the task and then offers 3 to 4 activities that you can use to meet those goals. I recommend that you review the activities in order to decide which will work best for your camp, taking into account the age of your campers and the specific culture of your camp. You're welcome to pull pieces from the activities to create your own activities based on the learning goals set out, or to use other activities on our website, which we'll get to in a minute. So before we get there, I'm just going to talk you around this wheel, starting from task 1. So the tasks are introduction and values clarification, understanding tzedakah, building consensus, defining mission, grant proposals, site visits, grant making decision, and celebration and sharing. This program guide can be downloaded from our website at www.jtfn.org, as you see on the screen, / and so on. I won't read the whole thing to you. The hyperlink is there. In the black box on your screen is a screenshot from that web page where you can see that you have a choice. So you can download the full program guide or each task as an individual PDF. There are 3 appendices on this page as well. Those are a sample request for proposal, a sample grant acceptance and grant denial letters to be sent to nonprofits, and a vocabulary of nonprofit terms for your teams. I also want to mention that on JTFN.org we have many more resources, and this is new for everyone because this website was had not launched yet as of last summer. So if you head to JTFN, to that second URL on the page, you can see specific resources that have been created by other camps for their Camp Philanthropy program beyond what we have in the program guide that JTFN created and compiled. And even beyond that, there's many other materials in the general resources section on JTFN's website if you find that what you're looking for is not in this curriculum. We also really hope that you'll help us by developing and help each other by developing new materials this summer. So if you take the learning goals of any of these tasks and develop something new, please share that with us, and we'd love to add it to the specific camp resources page once we have it from you. Last, I just want to recommend that you download these materials before you get to camp. We know that not all camps have consistent internet connection, so that way you'll be sure that you have it when you need it.
Next we're going to talk about you, everyone's favorite topic, the summer educator. On this screen you can see now yourself represented by these 3 smiley yellow faces. At JTFN, with all of our programs, but specifically with camp, we like to think that the facilitators of these programs really develop 3 skill sets to successfully run a teen foundation. Knowledge of Jewish texts and values, facilitation skills with groups of teens, and an understanding of grant making and nonprofits. So you can see in this triple Venn diagram sort of the overlap of where some of you might be. And if you're a real rock star, you'll be right in the center. Recognizing that there might be areas that you are really strong in and areas that might need more work. So think about, is there a way that you can improve on some of these areas, or is there an opportunity for you to bring in a guest facilitator for certain aspects of the program guide? If you have someone on camp, perhaps a development person who is really knowledgeable of grant making, having them come in and help do some grant making explanation might be a good way to have this piece be taught to your group. We've seen this at a lot of other camps, and they've reported with great success. So we're going to actually take a second and do a poll for everyone. This is going to be an anonymous self-assessment of, on this chart, where do you think you are in these 3 areas? Where do you think you are? You can select all that apply. You can select Jewish texts and values, strong in facilitation with teens, and strong in grant making and nonprofits. We'll take a second for people to fill out and select all that apply. In your areas, again, this is anonymous. Oh. Great. And as we can see here, great. A lot of people said that they felt strong in facilitation with teens. A lot of people indicated that they felt strong in Jewish texts and values. And some people said they have a strength in grant making and nonprofits. This is actually, I think, the same breakdown we saw on our last training. If there's an area you feel you need improvement in, as we said, it's probably important to spend some extra time preparing those materials in that specific area. Again, also, if you want certain help on things specifically, this can be one of the consultations you have with Naomi or myself. You can ask us and we can help you, and we can share some other resources that might help you in this area. We're going to do another poll in a second about scheduling the Teen Foundation. Our experience with our camp programs over the last several years is that camps have told us that this program from start to finish takes approximately 15 programmatic hours to successfully go through from beginning to end from all 8 steps. These 15 hours do not include transportation to and from your site visit, so those would be on top of 15 hours. The beauty of this program, however, is that you can allocate the 15 hours in whatever way works best for your camp and your teens. Some camps have done 2 or 3 seminar days where they meet for longer periods of time over a select number of days in a row. Some camps do daily meetings. Some camps do meetings 2 to 4 times a week. Some do it once a week. Or there's a combination of all of these things. We're going to, again, take a poll about what you're thinking, and I'm going to call on some of the camps to share the results for how your camp will break down the 15 hours. So go ahead and indicate just one on the screen. Okay. So we have a couple of people indicated that they're going to do a combination of all these options. Some people are going to do weekly meetings, and some people are going to meet 2 to 4 times a week. Could I hear from one of the camps that's going to have this be the weekly meeting option and sort of talk about how they'll schedule this and the time of day and why they think they want to go in that approach? Weekly meetings?
Yeah, I indicated weekly meetings. We have an 8-week summer, and we plan to make the foundation board that it be a requirement for only full summer campers, which is a good majority in our camp at that age anyway. And yeah, typically the meetings will take place once a week. Each week we'll be able to go through another module of the curriculum. And then there's additional time sometimes in the later weeks as they start deliberating over the RFPs and making a decision, and then also preparing a final presentation that they share with the whole camp at the end as well.
Great. Thank you. I love that you mentioned the presentation at the end. Can we hear from someone who's meeting more than once a week, maybe 2 or 4 times a week? Again, if you're muted, you can press *7 to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I indicated meeting 2 to 4 times a week, probably, I think somewhere in the middle, 3 times a week maybe. The CIT program at Kaufman is 5 weeks long, and it's divided into 2 different sections. So for the first 3 weeks of camp, they're together as a whole unit, and I envision that this would happen during those first 3 weeks. So I think, meeting a couple of times a week would probably be both beneficial.
Great.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. It's important. You both mentioned a couple factors that I think, well, I'm glad nobody put unsure, but something to think about is, number one, the number of weeks your campers are ultimately there. Number two, sort of if there's a section of time, like Katie mentioned, where the campers will be sort of in a different setup, especially if they're CIT campers. Number 3 is thinking about, are there special days at camp? I know a lot of camps have, almost every Jewish camp I think I know of has a different schedule on Shabbat than the rest of the week. There's also off-camp trips. There's Maccabia, 4th of July. There's a lot of special days on camp that I remember. So in thinking about those when you schedule it too. I would say that one of the biggest things we heard from a lot of camps last summer is that they didn't schedule their time out in ahead, and then they rushed in the last 3 days to get this done, and the end of the program didn't end in the way they would have wanted it to. So spacing out the 15 hours and earmarking that time will make a really big difference in both your experience as the facilitator and in the experience of teens. So we're really encouraging you to work with your administrator to schedule this out so that everything gets the time it deserves.
So after you feel confident in understanding what a team foundation does and what it aims to accomplish at large, you can start to put together the pieces for what this will look like at your camp this summer. So you may not be able to answer all the questions on the screen right now, but these are all things that are worth thinking about before the summer begins. And if you'd like to move the first of your 2 consultation phone calls to before the summer, Andrew and I can help you work through some of these questions. I'm also going to ask you to just think about a couple of these questions now and have anyone who worked on the Team Foundation last year share your approach. And perhaps some of you who are new to this summer also have some thoughts to share. One special note about other staff at camp, which is reflected in questions 3 and 4, before I ask for you to think about these things. So if there are other staff who are going to be heavily involved, we recommend that you provide a short explanation or really orientation to the Teen Foundation. This is great to include during staff orientation week. So it might be best to check with your director for a half hour or an hour during staff week to meet with the appropriate people to go over this information. So for example, if you're a division head, then you may know that there will be, all these bunk counselors who are there during these sessions, and so it pays to have their buy-in. You may want to break up into smaller groups during some of these programs, so it's important that they'll really be oriented to what this program is about, and that's part of why we're going to provide this PowerPoint to you afterwards so you can share it with them. And of course, we welcome you to print out all of the materials for everyone, particularly the introduction to the curriculum might be useful to make sure everyone has read, because each of the individual tasks, if you're the person leading up this program, you might pick which activities are done so you can share them as you go, but the introduction provides, like this PowerPoint, kind of a basis for the work that we're trying to do. So I don't want to put anyone on the spot too much, but I'm just going to ask you, can anybody tell me how many teens you're expecting to be involved with this program this summer, and does that mean that they'll be in one group or multiple groups? Again, maybe somebody who's worked on this last summer and is going to replicate the same model.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Who's that?
Hi, this is Julie from Camp Pointel.
Hi, great.
Hi. So last year our 7th graders were about 25 people to start with, and I did notice that second session a few campers went home for a session, and it was easier to do the group with a smaller cohort. So I have to figure out the exact numbers for this year, but I think if it's larger than last year, then I'll consider doing 2 separate ones.
Great. So I think that's a really important point. We say that the max is 25. That is a big group, and especially depending on the kids, if you know them, or the age group, like you're working with kids on the lower end of the spectrum that JTFN works with, it's probably easier to give them each a voice if they're in a smaller group. The thing I'll mention to make sure you're aware of is that also means that whatever grant-making pool you have needs to be broken up among those 2 groups. So that might mean that each group of, let's say, 15 kids is able to decide where $500 is going if you have the base $1,000. But they would also understand that collectively their group is going to give $1,000.
Mhm.
And I've seen the money be broken down into as many as 4 cohorts who each have $250. So this can definitely be done in any configuration that any of you may have. Thanks so much, Julie. Second, I just want to draw your attention to this question of other staff members. So when you think about a combination of your own skills, like we asked you to reflect on earlier, and the staff that are available to you at your camp, who else do you think is going to be brought into this process? Will you bring in the director or development director to highlight the grant-making pieces? Will you ask the year-round facilities manager who lives up there all year to help you identify nonprofits? There are endless permutations. So can anyone speak to what additional staff you brought in last summer, first of all? So anyone who worked on this program last summer, what other staff did you have involved? It may be as simple as just co-facilitators. Nothing to share? Everyone ran this program on their own? What about those of you that are running this for the first time this summer? Do you have any thoughts about who at your camp you might be able to bring in? All right. I'm not going to stress and put anyone on the spot. I think I gave you a few examples of other types of people you might want to bring into this conversation.
Naomi, I can share some information from other camps.
That would be terrific.
We had a camp out in Washington, Camp Solomon Schechter, that had a couple of sessions led by their development director who led some of the grant making, and they also scheduled a camp donor who was on camp to come talk to the group about what it means to be a Jewish philanthropist. And I heard that he spoke about the Jewish organizations he chooses to give to and sort of why he thinks that learning about organizations and being philanthropic in the Jewish community is important to him. So that was a sort of a guest speaker they brought in. And I've heard other camps that have brought in visiting faculty that includes rabbis and educators to come in and help with some of the lessons on Jewish value clarifications and Jewish texts and mission statements. So bringing in those visitors that are on camp that provide so much to your camp. Thinking about who do I have around me that's really good at this kind of work or this specific area, and how can I use them to the ability. It's also another way just to let more of the people on camp know about the great work that this one group of teens is doing in this one area. That kind of connects. And you'll see in the program guide to task number 8, sort of celebration and sharing this with the rest of camp. So those are some options to consider that I know other camps have worked on.
Thanks for sharing those with all of us, Andrew. So we're going to move ahead. We noticed when we did that little self-evaluation before that many of us are extremely confident in our ability to facilitate with teens, even pretty confident in our Jewish values, ability to work with Jewish values. Many have less experience with grant making, and that is not a prerequisite of running this program. And so as a combination of working with other people that you can identify, working with Andrew or myself to learn more about this area and the information we're going to present here, you'll all be up to speed. So we're So I just want to be clear first that when we talk about philanthropy in this program, we mean the giving of grants or money, not fundraising. So I want to learn a little bit about your previous involvement, if any, in grant making. And so actually, before we move to that poll, let's just go through what's on the screen. So what we're going to cover in this section is identifying nonprofit organizations, sending out requests for proposals, reviewing grant proposals, site visits, and building consensus. Now we're ready to look at that poll. So what experience do you have with grant making?
Feel free to check all that apply on this one. Okay.
Great. So, I'll just note here two things for you. You see that two of the options that none of you checked off were participating in a teen foundation or taking a philanthropy course. Now, it is possible that some of your teens may have actually participated in some type of program before, and additionally that the other staff members could have been involved in a philanthropy course. These courses are popping up at many universities. So again, that's just something you might want to find out when you start this process, which will tell you who else you can turn to who has some experience with this. But it sounds like some of you have given grants. A number, 60% have written or applied for grants, and of course we know that a number of you have run the Teen Foundation before.
And just before we continue, thinking more long-term, eventually the plan is for someone who did this program at your camp to be the one to facilitate it with campers, as opposed in the cycle of raising campers to be staff. We're starting to see that at a couple of camps. Participants of this are now running this program. Something to look forward to in years ahead at your camp.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. So if you've not done so already, your next step in this process is to contact local nonprofits. A good rule of thumb to start contacting them about a month before you arrive at camp. So you'll need to create a request for proposals to send out. You can use a sample that's in the program guide. We mentioned that it's on that web page before, or even update the one that your camp sent last summer. And the Teen Foundation must review at least 3 grant proposals from local nonprofits and conduct 2 site visits during the summer. So where should you look if you want to start to identify nonprofits? First, use your camp connections. Is there a history of philanthropy or service projects at your camp? Can you go to those same organizations that already hopefully have had a positive interaction with your camp and campers? Can you go to other staff members or your director or board who may have connections to nonprofits as well? Second, can you use your own personal connections? It's always easier to reach out to someone who knows you a little bit, and you can explain this process to them and get them excited about it. Next, you can think about reaching out to the local Jewish Federation in your area. They would be particularly useful in providing Jewish nonprofits that are local to you. And last, in a number of communities, there are year-round teen philanthropy programs. And so JTFN has a list of those programs. The link is on your screen now. And so you can see where you may be able to make those connections. So you might want to reach out to a local program leader, find out some of the organizations that their teens have funded over the years, because you know that those organizations are primed to work with teens. Next, what should you look for? So location is key, because as we mentioned, the focus for the nonprofits that you are identifying is local, and part of the reason for that is that they need to be accessible for you to be able to get there for site visits. consequently, they also need to have the capacity for site visits. So you need to make sure that they can accept the number of kids that you would want to send, and that they're going to have somebody to run that site visit at the appropriate time during the summer. We even recommend that you let them know from the first conversation when you're hoping to do site visits. Obviously, you will have scheduled that into your calendar already. That way you can make sure that their ability matches up with your timeline. And last, we want to consider teens' interest, of course. So many of you have previous experience either with these particular teens or with teens in general. So that will give you a little insight into what might interest them in the nonprofit world. And JTFN also has a bit of information about this. So here are the top 5 popular issue areas that teen foundations gave to the last time we asked the field about where their money was going. So those are youth and children, education, poverty, Jewish identity, and special needs. And I just want to mention also that it really is okay to return to a nonprofit from last summer that your camp used or that you made a connection with individually. If there's a new group, as long as the group of campers that you're working with are a new group of campers, there's no reason not to go to those same nonprofits. And I'll also mention that we often hear concern from program leaders, from new program leaders, wondering why would a nonprofit put time into filling out this form for me if they know it's only for $1,000. So we've really found that that is not a big concern, and that nonprofits are generally excited to be presenting their organization to a new group and to a group of teens. And they understand the educational relevance in this as well as the potential to get some money from the process. So, as we mentioned, you're going to put out a request for proposals. So an RFP, or request for proposals, asks a nonprofit to apply for a grant, explains any eligibility requirements, and asks them to complete a grant proposal. So you would want to provide an introductory letter explaining your foundation, which the RFP sample we have actually has a little introduction, a space where you can fill in your particular camp's information. Guidelines for project eligibility, so things like how much money can they apply for. So you may want to change that based on, again, if you have multiple cohorts, you might change the amount of money. Important dates such as application and notification deadlines, and contact information for the lead professional at camp. So that's generally the summer educator, which is you. Often in the grant-making world, institutions will release an RFP widely and then receive grant proposals. But in this case, your teen foundation is not yet well known, so I encourage you to reach out personally to the organizations that you would like to submit grant proposals, probably with a phone call first, or an email suggesting a phone call, to explain this program to them and tell them what you are asking for. And like I mentioned before, they're generally met with positive responses. It is important to be clear in that conversation that you're going to need them to complete a short grant proposal and to be available for site visits if they are chosen to be visited. So some of you might be, So again, we just wanted to lay this out to have an understanding of, what you're going to be asking them to do. And really, filling out the application should take no more than a half hour for each of these nonprofits. You can see how simple it is if you open that link on our website. And do make sure before you send out those RFPs that you fill in the spots where the sample we provided asked you to fill in information particularly relevant to your camp, like your contact information and deadlines and things. All right.
Oh, we skipped ahead a little bit. There we go. So for up until this point in the webinar, for those who've been worked with us last year, a lot of this has been review information, and now we're going to take a second and talk about an exciting new opportunity for this summer. So JTFN is going to be providing all camps with 3 grant proposals that come from national and international Jewish nonprofits. These are in addition to the 3 local grant proposals that you will solicit and receive back, and in addition to the 2 off-camp site visits that are still required. So that's an important point, that these are additional national organizations to add to your consideration. Important to note that how this will work. You're going to receive these grant proposals, and on that will be the contact person that we've already worked with from these organizations. And if your teens decide that they're interested in possibly granting to one of these larger nonprofits, you're going to set up a Skype visit or a phone call with the designated person at that organization. We hope that there will be some sort of direct interaction and connection between this nonprofit and your camp in absence of an actual site visit, but as a way for your campers to still make a grant decision feeling like they know the organization. And why is this new for this year, and why are we doing this? Well, this opportunity for new conversations that we heard last summer did not take place as much as we wanted to. First, we heard from many camps that they should be able to have the conversation of whether they should award their grants to Jewish or to non-sectarian, to secular organizations. In the past, that conversation never really took place because the Jewish nonprofits were not within physical site visit distance, and therefore there were no Jewish organizations, and then this conversation didn't come up. So this is a real conversation we want your teens to have. We want you to sort of encourage them to have. The second conversation is giving locally versus giving nationally and internationally, sort of serving our community versus serving a community that's beyond ours. And there's some resources in our curriculum that sort of deal with this. So the 3 nonprofits that we've worked with that are you will be receiving grant proposals from are the following on the screen: Matan, which works with Jewish students with special needs; Innovation Africa, which brings Israeli innovations to African villages; and Leket Israel, the National Food Bank of Israel. Their representative, I do not believe, is in Israel, so the time zone challenge should not be an issue there. And again, you'll receive this information later this month. But at this point, does anybody have any questions on this new nonprofit aspect that we're offering? Or is anyone excited that this is going to be included for this summer?
Well, I see in the chat box that Sam from New Jersey Y Camp added that he feels this is a great addition. Sam, do you want to say anything about that to the group? How you see using this with your program?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good debate for the campus to be able to get into last year about what type of organization they were giving to, and we had local organizations near camp, most of which near our campgrounds aren't Jewish, and then we had from slightly further afield, but in a more kind of Jewish suburban area of New Jersey, so there were Jewish organizations. And I think just adding kind of these global organizations is just another nice element for our kids to be able to weigh up.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
We're excited. If your teens decide to go in this route, we're really excited to hear how it goes, as this is something new we're trying out for this year.
So I have a question. This is Alana. Can you hear me? Okay. Just to confirm then, so in addition to our organizations that we get RFPs from, the teens get to also look at these organizations and decide out of, let's say, all 8 of those total, or however many, that these are part of the grants that they get to potentially, RFPs they get to submit to, right? But it's not choose one of these 3 in addition to all the other ones.
Correct. It's these 3 plus, let's say you find 3 local ones, so they would be looking at 6. And they can choose 1 out of 6. And ultimately, if they want to decide we want to split our money, if that's the consensus decision they come to, then that can be the decision they come to. But I'm not saying that there's 2 categories and you have to grant to both categories.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Good question, though. Thank you.
And I'll add that you can also decide that it only makes sense to present 2 of these because you have a lot of others, or perhaps you see that the teens feel really passionate about food insecurity, and so then you might you might have noticed that their passion in that area, notice that for for local organizations, and then also add Leket Israel, just for example. So it's up to you how you want to use them. I see what may be a question in the chat, Andrew.
Well, it's actually a comment from Julie from Pointel, and I think she makes a great point that this is a debate that teens are really excited about having, and that, as she said, Judaism is very important to some of the teens and to granted Jewish organizations. Julie, am I on the right track? Is this sort of what you meant?
Yeah. Last year we ended up deciding between a Jewish organization and the Red Cross in the end, and a lot of them, the campers I did it with were only in 7th grade, and it really surprised me how much they cared about the Jewish values, and they ended up giving it to the Hillel Academy.
Great. And yeah, teens can always surprise you. So thank you, Julie. Well, again, if you decide to grant to one of these camps and work in this direction, we at JTFN are really excited to hear how that goes. So please be sharing that information with us. So we're going to talk about site visits, actual physical site visits of going off camp. When you get to the site visit task in the curriculum, your teens will have already reviewed the grant proposals that they've received. And then Task 5 has a lot of information about how to get your teens ready for a site visit. So there's some preparation that is required, both with your camp administrator in terms of scheduling transportation, making sure you have any sort of health paperwork that needs to go off camp, making sure that they know that the timing is right, preparing your camp, making sure that if it's campers from a variety of units that their unit heads know, following the steps that are needed with your camp administrator. Also, you'll find information about preparation with the nonprofit and sort of how to set them up to let them know that you're coming and what to expect. We have resources in Task 5 for that. And then preparing them with your campers and helping them form questions, helping them figure out what to look for, what's important. So again, check out Task 5 for a bunch of site visit resources. The day of the site visit, typical site visits we've heard from camps last about an hour. 20 or so of those minutes are a presentation from someone at the nonprofit, a development professional, depending on the organization. And they'll present about the nonprofit and the specific project that they are applying for funding for, typically. There'll be a tour of the location or of the project that's being funded. And then there will be a chance to ask questions. So preparing your teams to ask questions is a really big step. Then follow-up. Before I jump into follow-up. You may want to encourage your teens to dress a little nicer than usual on the site visit day. This not only presents a nice picture of your teens, but also creates a feeling of empowerment and helps the teens themselves feel like that they are representatives of the nonprofit world and that they are coming there as funders. So dressing a little nice is encouraged. Debrief. Following up the site visit, this is an essential part of the process to really understand what we've learned. Making sure that your teens have a chance to sort of discuss their impressions pretty close to after the site visit before the grant-making conversation. So I want to make sure that's clear, that separating the conversations of what was that site visit like and what did you learn and what do you think, and the conversation of now we have to think about our money, where should we give that to? If those are separate conversations, the grant-making decision will go easier and that they'll be able to separate these two thoughts in their head. You can even ask the nonprofit to give you a private space and meet separately so you can discuss how that site visit went immediately afterwards, or do it on the bus going home. or stopping off for ice cream or something like that. So that sort of debrief is really important before you jump into grant making. And then also a thank you to the organization. I think there are thank you letters samples in the guide, if not just a brief thank you letter either by you or written by your teams can be really helpful in just saying thank you to the nonprofit for allowing them to come, and that you will be in touch soon with your grant making decision. And as we heard from an 8th grade camper at URJ Crane Lake Camp, going on site visits was the most meaningful experience for me because I got to see the operations going on. Seeing something on paper is okay, but seeing it with your own eyes gives you a real wake-up call. So the power of site visits, it's a very important part of the process that we've found teens really connect with. So making sure that the preparation, the day of the site visit, and the follow-up are all done really well.
So one of the learning goals of the program is making decisions through consensus. Consensus is a mutual agreement among members of a group where all legitimate concerns of the individuals have been addressed. Excuse me. I want to highlight the importance of your understanding of consensus building before you teach it to teens. So consensus can be tricky to teach and implement without experience. I would challenge you, especially if you're working with a bigger team on this summer, like a group, a number of bunk counselors along with yourself, to practice using consensus and having one of you facilitate that conversation among yourselves so that you're prepared to teach it to your teens. You can really learn a lot by experiencing it yourself. In fact, I think that's really the best way to learn about how to do this process well. And this is also a great leadership development tool for your staff. So some of you may have that in mind as one of your goals this summer. So this is a great thing to teach your staff about how to make a decision without voting using consensus building. Do remember, both if you're practicing with a group for the sake of learning or when you're engaged in this process with your teens, that consensus building is very time-consuming work. So make sure that you leave a lot of time. And we didn't speak about exactly how much time to allot to each of the 8 tasks, but this is definitely a place in those 8 tasks where you're going to need more than an hour. You're going to need a longer session, probably at least 2 hours, depending on your teens. You'll have an idea of where the group is leaning and if this is going to be a longer or shorter conversation. But again, just make sure to allow that time. I was once at a Teen Foundation meeting where the teens, actually at a camp, where they were deciding where to give their grant. And as the group was discussing the process afterwards, one of the teens said, I didn't really care that my favorite organization wasn't chosen because at least I got to tell everyone what I thought. And so to me, that is why consensus building is important. It's important because the ideas, opinions, and the concerns of all group members are heard, and the teens know that. Last summer from our evaluation, we heard the following from a teen in 11th grade from Camp Kadima, that the most personally meaningful part of this whole Teen Foundation process was making the decisions. This is because everyone had a chance to add their opinion on the decisions. No one ever felt excluded out of the decision-making process. So that is exactly the environment that we want to create and the goal of this program around this process of consensus building. I wonder if there's any questions about that.
We're going to talk briefly. We're coming up on the end of this training webinar. I think there'll probably be about 15 more minutes. I know we slayed this from 1 to 3, but we'll end a little bit early today. Like last summer, JTFN, especially from the camps that are receiving funding from us, we require all camps to do at least one newsletter, article, or blog post, or parent email. Last summer, the minimum was 2, and this year the minimum is 1. However, the more the merrier, to share the great work that your Teen Foundation is doing. Posting updates on social media is also encouraged, and letting us know on our Facebook page or our Twitter handle. is also really encouraged. We like to sort of share out with the rest of our field, our year-round programs we connect with, what our summer programs are doing. Campers can also be the ones to sort of take on this lead of blog posts. We have a great couple blog posts written by campers this summer about the process. And specifically this conversation of giving to Jewish versus non-Jewish that Julie mentioned, I think would be a really interesting one for a camper to write. So that'd be great. Something to think about. Be sure to refer to your teen foundation as the Camp Blank Teen Foundation, or the, if you call it, for example, the we have Jacob's Camp Teen Foundation is one of the camps that we work with, or the URJ Camp Kalsman Teen Foundation. We discourage you from calling it the JTFN group. We really want you to sort of own that the Teen Foundation is at your camp. But in any of your materials you mention, it's great to mention us in the Camp Philanthropy program. And the name of this program, think outside the tzedakah box. As you can see the logo right there, which we will include copies of for you. And it's also great to mention that your camp has been selected to participate in this program with 27 other camps from around the country. If you're interested in viewing sample blog posts from last summer, you can go to that link right there, jtfn.org/camp/blogs, and view some of the works written by campers and staff from last summer. And as we've mentioned this call, the final part of this process with your teens is what we call celebration and sharing. This is the final task at Task 8. At this point in the process, your campers will have made their decision, and you'll be sending thank you and rejection letters to the organization. This is, even though the last task, it's a very, very important task, specifically because this is the moment when we sort of think back and to think, what did we learn? It's easy to get to the end of a long process and say, yay, we did it, we're done, let's move on to the next thing. But as the educators of this program, it is important, and it's the responsibility of you guys to make sure that you don't just move to the next thing and that you are providing a space for reflection and recognition of this piece. Reflecting is really crucial with your teen campers as a learning modality. And reflection just doesn't have to be sitting in a circle and saying, so what do we think? But share one thing you liked about the program. But in this task we have a full list of various reflection activities. Some are writing, some are artistic, that your teens can creatively reflect on this experience. And we also have ways that you can help share this with the rest of your camp, which I know that some camps are really thinking about at the last night of camp, in the closing ceremony type, making big checks and saying we're giving these grants to these organizations as part of this. It also highlights for your younger campers something cool that they can be doing when they get to be older campers or get to be CITs.
Andrew, I know that before Sam mentioned something about a celebration and sharing event. Sam, would you be willing to share with us what that looked like last summer?
Yeah, the 15 to 20 foundation board members that were on the cohort, they put together like a presentation that took the form of an evening program for our whole camp, where they had a whole load of pictures from the site visits that they shared. They talked through like the debate and discussions that they had. They actually led some group-led activities with all of the audience, and got them kind of debating things and discussing things to demonstrate the idea of consensus building. They spoke about mission statements. They basically gave a full kind of presentation that took about 30 to 45 minutes that had also interactive activities, so they were kind of leading a program as well as just a presentation. And it was just a way of sharing the process that they'd gone through, which was only as a group of 15 to 20 people, and bringing it to the entire camp so that they all kind of got the exposure.
Great. Thank you, Sam.
That sounds like a great program. Thanks. Does anyone else have, who did this last summer, have sort of a celebration and sharing approach that they took? Well, another thing to think, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, this is Julie. Last year we did a celebration with just the campers that participated. They go to the other side of camp after 7th grade. So they were the oldest campers on the younger side. So the day that we took a tour of the older side of camp, we stopped in the canteen there and had a food type celebration. And then also at Shabbat that week with the entire camp, they made a small presentation about what happened and what they learned, which the younger campers seemed to be excited, and a lot of the older campers who didn't get to participate in previous years, I heard them saying oh, why didn't we do that when we were in 7th grade? So it was nice to see that it was enjoyed.
Great. Shabbat is a great time to do some celebration like this and maybe thinking about how you can connect this work to maybe the tour portion of that week, which I know that as a camper for many years, you know those portions pretty well, but thinking about how can we connect it to that. So great. Shabbat is a great time to also sort of bring this in. Thanks, Julie. So as your Teen Foundation, as I said, you've made the decisions and you celebrated this work, but as the summer educator, you have a couple more responsibilities about what it means to be a responsible grant maker. Because we're working with teens and teaching teens, I know that many of you know it's important to sort of uphold this responsibility of dealing with nonprofits to model to our teens proper behavior. So you and the teens as well can help in this process of creating notification letters to be delivered to all nonprofits that submitted grant applications. Whether or not you accepted or denied their grant, and whether or not you even site visited or not, but anyone that sends you back a complete grant proposal should get some sort of information in a timely manner about where your teens decided to give grants. As I said, we have sample acceptance and denial letters to be adapted and sent from your camp. You can probably use ones that you wrote last summer as well. But it's really important to let camps know in a timely manner whether or not they got the grant. They shouldn't be left hanging out in the air if they didn't get this. So sending that to all nonprofits. And then ultimately at the end of the day, as a representative of your camp, which I know that everyone loves and thinks that their camp is the best in the world, with that love, you should think about the reputation of your camp and being a representative. So we've heard from many program leaders at camps that this program helps build relationships with the nonprofits and the local communities, and leaves your local community, the town that your camp is in, feeling great about your camp's place in that community. So as a representative camp, this is a really important step as well. And then lastly, for those camps who are receiving funding from us, you and your administrator will need to make sure that copies of the checks, that before you send them to the nonprofits, make a photocopy or a digital scan copy and submit those to us so that we will submit back to you the reimbursement grant. Make sure this happens, and this is a similar process as last year. So for those of you who were over last year, the same sort of steps of you write the check first, copy the check, show us a copy, send that check, and then we will submit a reimbursement microgrant. So we'll take final questions in a second, but I want to really highlight the next steps for you. One, work with your administrator to finalize the Teen Foundation schedule within the camp calendar. As I mentioned, don't rush this in the last 3 days of camp in between final packing and all that stuff. 2, schedule time during staff orientation week to inform the other necessary staff about the Teen Foundation. And 3, start to identify the 5 or 6 local nonprofits. Then adapt and distribute the request for proposal and secure back at least 3 grant proposals. So these are really the next steps for you. And as today is the middle of May, thinking about these soon, depending on when you show up at camp, whether you're there early for senior staff week or whenever you're there, time goes by really fast at camp, as Naomi and I both know. So as much work as you can get done ahead of time will make this process all the better. So let's take a couple of minutes now. If people have any final questions or thoughts that they want to share, now is the time. You can unmute yourself by pressing *7, or you can post a question in the chat box anonymously to Naomi and I. And Especially if this is your first year doing this program, we'd love to help you think through anything that you have questions on. And people on the phone might also be able to share some of their insights. So any final questions?
I'm glad to see that everything we said was very clear.
I know that some people are more familiar and some people are less familiar with the program guide materials. So as you look through these, if you have questions, please be in touch with us. If there are no more questions at this time, then I think we will end this call pretty soon. As I mentioned, Naomi and I are going to be sending out copies of this slide and other resources, and we're also going to be indicating to you who your point person is between her and I. So each of your camps will either be assigned as Andrew or Naomi, as we call it here in the office. So you'll be hearing from us who your point person is throughout the summer to connect with. So we both look forward to reaching out to you guys, and want to thank you very much for your time today, and want to wish you the best of luck and let us know how we can be helpful. Our contact info is right there on the screen.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam. Okay.
Stop the recording.